Gabriel Halloway thought he had committed the perfect crime. He had the corner office, the 7-figure salary, and the beautiful young mistress, Sasha, draped on his arm. He treated his wife, Vivian, like an invisible ghost in her own home, a relic of his past life before he became a titan of industry. Tonight was supposed to be his coronation. He brought his mistress to the most important merger meeting of his life, expecting to shake hands with an elderly CEO, but when the boardroom doors opened, the person sitting at the head of the table wasn't an old man. It was the woman he had left crying at the breakfast table that very morning, and she wasn't there to serve dinner. She was there to end him. Gabriel Halloway adjusted his silk tie in the rear-view mirror of his silver Mercedes S-Class, a smirk playing on his lips. He checked his reflection, admiring the sharp jawline and the greying temples that he felt gave him an air of distinguished authority. At 45, Gabriel believed he was in the prime of his life. He was the senior vice president of sales at Apex Logistics, and today he was going to close the deal that would finally hand him the CEO position he felt he deserved. The deal was with Sterling Industries, a massive, privately held conglomerate that had been silently buying up logistics firms across the Midwest. The CEO, known only on the paperwork as A. Sterling, was rumored to be a recluse, an old money patriarch who signed checks and let others do the talking. Gabriel had never met him. He didn't need to. Gabriel could sell ice to a polar bear. He certainly wasn't worried about some geriatric billionaire. His phone buzzed on the center console. The name on the screen made his smile widen. Sasha. "I'm outside," he answered, his voice dropping an octave, smooth and commanding. "You better be." Sasha's voice came through, teasing and petulant. "These heels are killing me, and if we're going to Le Bernardin, I want to get there before the good lighting is gone." Sasha Miller was 24, an executive assistant at a rival firm, and the embodiment of everything Gabriel felt he was entitled to. She was vibrant, demanding, and looked incredible in the designer dresses he bought her, using a separate credit card his wife, Vivian, didn't know about. Vivian. The thought of his wife made Gabriel's jaw tighten. That morning, the scene at the Halloway household had been pathetic. Vivian had been standing by the kitchen island, wearing that faded grey cardigan she loved, buttering toast. She looked tired. She always looked tired. "Will you be home for dinner?" she had asked, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't even look up. Gabriel had laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Dinner?" "Vivian, I'm closing the Sterling merger tonight. I'll be dining with the biggest sharks in the city. Don't wait up." "It's our 15th anniversary, Gabriel," she had said, finally raising her eyes. They were blue, once bright, now dulled by years of his neglect. "Buy yourself something nice," he had snapped, tossing his credit card onto the granite counter, "and get the car washed. It's embarrassing." He had walked out without a goodbye. He didn't feel guilty. In Gabriel's mind, he had outgrown Vivian. She was a simple woman, a small-town girl he had married before his career skyrocketed. She didn't understand business. She didn't understand power. She was just there, a relic. Now, pulling up to the curb of Sasha's apartment complex, that life felt a million miles away. Sasha hopped into the car, a vision in a tight red dress that cost more than Vivian's entire wardrobe. "You look expensive," Gabriel purred, leaning over to kiss her. Sasha pulled back slightly, checking her lipstick in the visor mirror. "I look like the future Mrs. Halloway," she corrected him, flashing a wicked grin. "Did you tell her?" "Not yet," Gabriel lied. He had no intention of divorcing Vivian until he secured the CEO spot. Vivian's family had some obscure trust fund connections that helped with his tax status, and he needed everything clean for the audit. After the deal closes tonight, once I'm CEO of the new merged entity, I'll have the golden parachute. Then I'll drop the papers. "You promised, Gabriel," Sasha warned, tapping her manicured nails on the leather dashboard. "I'm not going to be your side piece forever, especially not while you drag that dowdy woman to galas. Relax, Gabriel said, merging onto the highway. Tonight is the turning point. I'm bringing you to the dinner. Sasha's eyes widened. To the client meeting? Is that safe? It's a power move, Gabriel said, his ego swelling. Old man Sterling is bringing his board. I need to show them I'm a modern man. Virile, aggressive. Bringing a stunning executive associate like you shows I'm in control. Besides, Arthur Sterling is probably 80 years old. He won't know the difference between a wife and an assistant. He'll just be jealous. Gabriel truly believed this. He believed the world operated on the rules he invented. He saw people as props in the movie of his life. He didn't realize that the genre of the movie was about to change from a corporate drama to a tragedy. They arrived at the restaurant, the Obsidian Room, a place so exclusive the menu didn't have prices. The valet took the keys. Gabriel straightened his jacket, took Sasha's arm, and marched towards the entrance. Game time, he whispered. Let's go buy a company. Inside, the restaurant was dimly lit, smelling of aged mahogany and truffle oil. The host, a man named Pierre, who knew Gabriel well, looked up. His eyes flickered from Gabriel to Sasha, and for a split second, Gabriel saw a flash of hesitation, maybe even pity, in the Frenchman's eyes. Mr. Halloway, Pierre said, his voice stiff. Your party is waiting in the private dining room. The Sterling party has arrived. Excellent, Gabriel said, ignoring Pierre's tone. Is Arthur Sterling there? Pierre paused. He looked down at his reservation book, then back at Gabriel. The CEO is present, yes, along with their legal counsel, Mr. Blackwood. Great, lead the way. As they walked through the dining room, heads turned. Gabriel soaked it up. They were looking at Sasha, sure, but they were looking at him because he was the man who had her. He felt invincible. They reached the heavy oak doors of the private room. Gabriel paused, his hand on the brass handle. He turned to Sasha. Just sit there, look beautiful, and laugh at my jokes. Let me handle the heavy lifting. I always do, she winked. Gabriel pushed the doors open. The private dining room was freezing. That was the first thing Gabriel noticed, a chill that seemed to cut through his expensive suit. The room was dominated by a long, polished table set for 6, but only 3 people were currently seated. On the left sat Liam Blackwood, the attorney for Sterling Industries. Gabriel knew him by reputation, a shark in a 3-piece suit who had dismantled hostile takeovers with a single legal brief. Next to him was a younger man, scribbling furiously on a tablet, likely a junior associate. And at the head of the table, with their back to the door, sat a figure in a high-backed leather chair. The chair was turned slightly towards the window, looking out over the city skyline, obscuring the person's face. "Gentlemen," Gabriel announced, his voice booming. He walked in, guiding Sasha with a hand on her lower back. "Apologies if we kept you waiting. Traffic in the city is a nightmare." Liam Blackwood looked up. He didn't smile. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and looked at Sasha, then back at Gabriel. "Mr. Halloway, we were just discussing the final terms." "Please, call me Gabriel," he said, pulling out a chair for Sasha. "And this is Miss Miller, my close associate. She'll be taking notes for our side." It was a lie, and a bad one. Sasha didn't even have a notepad. She placed her glittering clutch on the table and crossed her legs, flashing a smile at the attorney. "Charmed," she said. Blackwood didn't respond to her. He looked at Gabriel with an expression that sat somewhere between confusion and distaste. "You brought a guest to a closed merger discussion, Mr. Halloway. That is unconventional." "I like to break the mold, Liam," Gabriel said, sitting down and unbuttoning his jacket. He felt the adrenaline pumping. "Now, where is the man of the hour? Mr. Sterling? I see he's admiring the view." Gabriel gestured to the person in the head chair. The figure in the chair didn't move. "The CEO is present," Blackwood said quietly. "But there seems to be a misunderstanding regarding the name." Gabriel chuckled, pouring himself a glass of water. "Sterling, right? Arthur?" Archibald. I admit your ownership structure is opaque, but as long as the check clears, I don't care if his name is Mickey Mouse. Sasha giggled. You're terrible, Gabriel. I'm efficient. Gabriel grinned. He looked at the back of the leather chair. Mr. Sterling, turn around. Let's look each other in the eye. We're about to make history. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like a jet engine in the quiet. The junior associate stopped typing. Blackwood closed his folder. Slowly, the leather chair began to swivel. It's not Arthur, a voice said. Gabriel froze. The glass of water stopped halfway to his mouth. The voice was familiar, but it was wrong. It didn't belong here. It belonged in a suburban kitchen. It belonged to laundry detergent and school runs. It belonged to the past he was trying to erase. The chair finished its rotation. Sitting there, fingers steeped together, was a woman. She wasn't wearing the grey cardigan. She was wearing a structured white blazer that screamed power, tailored to perfection. Her hair, usually pulled back in a messy bun, was blown out in sleek chestnut waves. Her makeup was flawless, sharp and cold, but the eyes were the same. The blue eyes he had ignored for 15 years. "Hello, Gabriel," Vivian said. Gabriel dropped the glass. It hit the table, shattering. Water soaked the white tablecloth and splashed onto his suit. Sasha jumped up with a shriek as the cold water hit her dress. "What the hell?" Sasha yelled. "Gabriel, look what you did!" But Gabriel couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He stared at his wife as if she were a ghost. "Vivian?" he choked out. What are you doing here? Did you follow me?" He stood up, anger quickly replacing the shock. "This is insane. Vivian, you can't be here. I'm in the middle of the most important meeting of my life. You need to leave. Now!" He turned to Blackwood, his face red. "I am so sorry. My wife. She's having a bit of a breakdown. I'll have security escort her out." "Sit down, Gabriel," Blackwood said. His voice was like a whip crack. "Excuse me," Gabriel snapped. "You don't tell me what to do. I'm handling this." He turned back to Vivian. "Vivian, get out. You're embarrassing me. Go home." Vivian didn't flinch. She picked up a crystal tumbler of scotch, swirled it gently, and took a sip. She looked at Sasha, who was frantically dabbing at her dress with a napkin, and then locked eyes with Gabriel. "I said hello, Gabriel," Vivian repeated, her tone conversational, deadly calm. "And I don't think I'll be going anywhere, seeing as I'm paying for the dinner." "You're paying?" Gabriel scoffed, laughing nervously. "With what money?" "My money?" "No," Vivian said softly. "With sterling money." Gabriel blinked. "What are you talking about?" Vivian leaned forward, the light catching the diamond necklace at her throat, a necklace Gabriel had never seen before. "You really never asked, did you?" she said, a sad smile playing on her lips. 15 years, Gabriel. You never asked about my maiden name. You knew me as Vivian S. Halloway. You never asked what the S stood for." Gabriel's mind raced. He tried to remember their wedding license. He tried to remember anything other than himself. "Sterling," he whispered. "Bingo," Vivian said. "My father was Arthur Sterling. He passed away 6 months ago. I inherited everything. The logistics division, the real estate, the tech holdings, all of it." She gestured to the room. "I am A. Sterling. I am the CEO of Sterling Industries, and I am the one acquiring your company." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Sasha stopped wiping her dress. She looked from Gabriel to Vivian, the color draining from her face. "Wait," Sasha stammered. She is the client." Vivian shifted her gaze to the mistress. She looked Sasha up and down, clinical and detached. "And you must be Sasha, the executive associate. Gabriel has bought you some lovely things with the joint account. I particularly like the earrings. I have the receipt for them on my phone." Gabriel felt the room spinning. This wasn't possible. Vivian was the woman who clipped coupons. Vivian was the woman who waited for him to come home. "This is a joke," Gabriel said, his voice trembling. "You're playing a game. You don't know anything about business, Vivian. You're a housewife." "I have a MBA from Wharton, Gabriel," Vivian said, taking another sip of scotch. "I put it on hold to raise our children while you chased your tail climbing middle management. But I've been running Sterling Industries from my home office for the last 4 months. Who do you think approved the initial inquiry into your company?" She slammed a folder onto the table. It made a loud thud. "I did," she said. "I wanted to see if you were as incompetent professionally as you are personally. And tonight, bringing your mistress to a merger meeting with your own wife?" Vivian stood up slowly. She was tall in her heels, imposing. "Tonight, you proved you're not just incompetent, Gabriel. You're a liability." Gabriel looked at Blackwood for help, but the lawyer just stared back, stone-faced. He looked at Sasha, but she was backing away towards the door. "Vivian, wait," Gabriel said, his survival instinct finally kicking in. He put on his sales face, a desperate, sweating mask. Let's talk about this, honey. We can separate the personal from the professional, right? This deal, it's good for both of us. It's millions." "Oh, the deal is happening," Vivian said. "Sterling Industries is acquiring Apex Logistics. That's already in motion." "Good," Gabriel exhaled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Good, so we can work this out. I'll stay on as CEO. We'll keep it in the family. There is one condition to the merger," Vivian interrupted. "Anything," Gabriel said. "The acquiring company reserves the right to restructure the leadership team immediately," Vivian recited from memory. "Specifically, the removal of toxic assets." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're fired, Gabriel." The phrase, "you're fired," hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, like smoke in a room with no windows. Gabriel Holloway didn't scream. He didn't flip the table. Instead, a strange, frozen smile plastered itself onto his face, a defense mechanism from decades of high-stakes sales meetings, where he had to pretend everything was fine while the ship was sinking. "Fired," Gabriel repeated, testing the word as if it were in a foreign language. He looked at Liam Blackwood, the attorney, and then back at his wife. "Vivian, honey, listen to yourself. You're upset. You're acting out. I understand. Finding out about this." He gestured vaguely toward Sasha, who was currently shrinking into the plush velvet of her chair, "is a shock. But you can't fire me from Apex. I don't work for Sterling Industries yet. The ink isn't dry." He regained a shred of his confidence. He smoothed his tie, the wet spot on his shirt cold against his chest. "I answer to the board of Apex, not you. And the board loves me. I brought in $30 million last quarter." Vivian didn't speak immediately. She reached into her leather portfolio, her movements slow and deliberate. The sound of the zipper opening was the only noise in the room. She pulled out a thick, bound document and slid it across the mahogany table. It stopped inches from Gabriel's hand. "Liam," Vivian said, her eyes never leaving Gabriel's, "please walk Mr. Holloway through Exhibit C." Liam Blackwood cleared his throat. He opened his own folder, his face devoid of emotion. "Mr. Holloway, at 4 p.m. today, the board of directors at Apex Logistics held an emergency vote. They were presented with evidence regarding gross misappropriation of company funds, falsification of expense reports, and violation of the Corporate Ethics Code." "What?" Gabriel blinked. "What emergency vote? I didn't get a notification." "You were bypassed," Liam stated simply. "As part of the acquisition agreement signed at 5:30 p.m. today, while you were driving here, Sterling Industries assumed controlling interest. The first act of the new majority shareholder," he nodded toward Vivian, "was to terminate your contract for cause, effective immediately." Gabriel snatched the document. His hands were shaking so hard the pages rattled. He flipped through them, his eyes darting over the legal jargon until they landed on a section highlighted in yellow. "Forensic Accounting Report, subject Gabriel Holloway." He saw lists, dates, amounts. Asterisk, Tercartier, 5th Ave, $4,500, flagged as client gifting. Four Seasons Resort. Maui. $12,000. Flagged as regional conference. Porsche leasing monthly. $1,800. Flagged as fleet management. Gabriel felt the blood drain from his face. He looked up, his eyes wild. These are business expenses. Legitimate business expenses. I was courting clients. Gabriel, Vivian's voice cut through his panic, soft but sharp as a scalpel. I checked the dates. The Maui trip? That was the week you told me you were in Cleveland for a supply chain seminar. You billed the company for a suite. She shifted her gaze to Sasha. And I assume she was the regional conference. Sasha gasped. He told me he paid for that. He told me it was his bonus money. He lied, Vivian said to the mistress, her voice devoid of judgment, stating it as a simple fact. Gabriel doesn't spend his own money. He spends the company's money, and technically, since I own the company now, he's been spending my money. Vivian leaned forward, clasping her hands. That's embezzlement, Gabriel. We're not just talking about losing your job. We're talking about criminal charges. Unless... Gabriel swallowed hard. His throat felt like it was full of sand. Unless what? Unless you walk away quietly, Vivian said. No severance, no golden parachute, no stock options. You sign the separation agreement tonight, admitting to the misconduct, and I might convince the board not to press charges. I won't send the file to the district attorney. You want me to leave with nothing? Gabriel hissed. I built that department. I gave 15 years of my life to that company. And you gave 15 years of your life to me. And look how that turned out, Vivian countered. You're walking away with exactly what you invested, Gabriel. 0. Gabriel looked at Sasha. He needed an ally. He needed someone to tell him he was right. That Vivian was crazy. Sasha, tell her. Tell her about the contacts I have. Tell her they need me. Sasha looked at the forensic report still open on the table. She saw the itemized list of gifts, the very jewelry she was wearing. She looked at Gabriel, a man she thought was a king, now looking like a sweating, desperate beggar. You charged my birthday dinner to the company, Sasha asked, her voice small, horrified. The one at Per Se. You said you saved up for months. Does it matter which card I used? Gabriel snapped, losing his patience. It's all the same pot of money. It matters to me. Sasha stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'm not going to be an accessory to fraud, Gabriel. I have a career. I'm applying to law school next year. Sit down, Sasha, Gabriel commanded, his face turning a mottled red. Don't you dare walk out on me. Sasha looked at Vivian. For a second, the two women, the wife and the mistress, shared a look. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a mutual understanding of the man sitting between them. I think I'm going to go, Sasha said quietly to Vivian. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know who you were. Vivian picked up her scotch again. I believe you. Men like Gabriel are very good at keeping worlds separate, until they collide. She took a sip. You can go, but leave the earrings. They are company property. Gabriel watched in horror as Sasha hesitated, her hand going to her earlobe. Tears welled up in her eyes. She unclasped the diamond studs, the ones he had given her 3 months ago, promising her the world, and placed them on the table next to the wet napkin. I'm sorry, Sasha whispered. She grabbed her clutch and bolted for the door, her heels clicking rapidly on the hardwood until the door slammed shut. Gabriel was alone with the wife he had underestimated and the lawyer who held his execution papers. She was flighty anyway, Gabriel muttered, trying to salvage his pride, though his voice cracked. Never could handle pressure. Sign the papers, Gabriel, Vivian said, bored now. She looked at her watch. I have a board meeting at 8 a.m. to announce the merger. I want your office cleared out before I get there. The pen felt heavy in Gabriel's hand, like a lead weight. He had signed the separation agreement. He had no choice. Liam Blackwood had laid it out clearly. sign and leave destitute, or fight and go to prison for corporate theft. Gabriel Halloway was a gambler, but he wasn't suicidal. He signed away his equity, his severance, and his reputation with a few jagged strokes of blue ink. "Wise choice," Blackwood said, snapping the folder shut immediately, as if fearing Gabriel might try to eat the paper to destroy the evidence. "I'm done here," Gabriel said, standing up. His legs felt weak. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping nausea. "I'm going home." "To the house?" Vivian asked. She hadn't moved from the head of the table. "Yes, to my house," Gabriel sneered. "Unless you found a way to take that from me in the last 2 hours, too?" Vivian sighed. It was a sound of deep, exhausted pity. "The house is in both our names, Gabriel. I can't kick you out tonight, but I won't be there. I'm staying at the St. Regis until the divorce lawyers sort out the assets." "Divorce?" Gabriel scoffed. "Right. Add it to the list." He turned to leave, but stopped. He needed one last word, one last attempt to bruise her, to prove he was still the man who mattered. "You know," he said, turning back to face her, "you think you've won. You think sitting in that chair makes you a CEO. But you're just a housewife playing dress-up in her daddy's suit. The market will eat you alive, Vivian. In 6 months, Sterling Industries will be bankrupt, and you'll come crawling back to me, asking how to fix it." Vivian looked at him. The room was dim, but the light from the window caught the sharp angle of her cheekbone. She didn't look angry. She looked at him the way one looks at a dead insect on a windowsill. "Gabriel," she said softly, "I've been running the logistics for your biggest competitor for 3 years under a pseudonym. I orchestrated the supply chain optimization that crushed Apex's margins last quarter. That was me. That was my algorithm." Gabriel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I didn't just inherit this company," she said. "I saved it. And I bought yours not because I wanted it, but because it was the cheapest way to acquire your warehouse infrastructure. You were the weak link that made the price drop." She turned her chair back towards the window, dismissing him completely. "Goodbye, Gabriel. Pierre is waiting to escort you out." Gabriel turned and slammed through the double doors. The transition from the silent, freezing private room to the bustling main dining room of the Obsidian Room was jarring. The restaurant was full now, the clatter of silverware, the hum of conversation, the laughter. It all assaulted his senses. He tried to walk with his head high, but he felt the eyes. Pierre, the maitre d', was standing by the hostess stand. He wasn't smiling. As Gabriel approached, Pierre stepped forward, blocking the path slightly. "Mr. Halloway," Pierre said, his voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "I trust the meeting was eventful?" "Move, Pierre," Gabriel grumbled, reaching for his valet ticket. "I'm afraid I cannot validate your parking tonight," Pierre said, keeping his hands clasped behind his back. "Mrs. Sterling, Mrs. Halloway, instructed us that the bill for the evening is to be covered by the corporate account, which covers guests. However, she specified that non-employees must cover their own incidental costs." Gabriel stared at him. "You're making me pay for valet?" "And the bottle of sparkling water you ordered," Pierre added, "and the glass you broke. We charged it to the card on file." Unfortunately, that card was declined. Gabriel froze. He checked his phone. 3 notifications from American Express. Card suspended by primary account holder. Vivian had cut the cards. All of them. "Here," Gabriel snarled, fishing a wad of cash from his pocket. His personal cash, the emergency roll he kept for tips. He threw a $100 bill at Pierre. "Keep the change." He stormed out the front door into the cool night air. The valet stand was busy. Expensive cars were lined up. Gabriel waited, tapping his foot, his heart hammering against his ribs. He needed to get into his Mercedes. He needed the leather seat, the silence, the power of the engine. He needed to drive fast. "Mr. Halloway?" The valet, a kid no older than 19, called out. "Finally," Gabriel snapped. "Bring it around." The kid looked nervous. He held up a set of keys, but he didn't move toward the car. I can't, sir. What do you mean you can't? Gabriel shouted. People waiting for their cars turned to look. A couple in evening wear whispered to each other. The towing company just left with it, sir, the valet stammered. Towing company? Gabriel felt the ground tilt. It's a lease. I'm fully paid up. The order came from the leasing agency, the valet explained, holding up a clipboard. Repo order, authorized by corporate guarantor. They said the corporate lease was terminated as of 6 p.m. Gabriel stood on the sidewalk. His suit was damp with sweat and spilled water. His mistress had left him. His job was gone. His credit cards were dead. And now, his car, the symbol of his status, his armor against the world, was being towed to a lot in Queens. He looked down the street. He saw a figure in a red dress getting into a yellow taxi a block away. Sasha. She hadn't even waited to see if he got out. Gabriel Halloway, the man who had woken up thinking he was a king, stood on the curb. He reached into his pocket for his phone to call an Uber. 2% battery. He stared at the black screen as the phone died. A light rain began to fall, misting the city streets. Gabriel looked around. He had no cash left. He had thrown his last 100 at Pierre. He had no ride. He had no umbrella. He looked back at the restaurant window. Through the glass, he could see the back of the private room. He saw the silhouette of a woman sitting in a high-backed chair, looking out at the city she now owned. Gabriel turned up his collar against the rain and began the long walk to the subway station. He hadn't been on a subway in 20 years. He hoped he still remembered how to buy a ticket. The descent into the subway station felt like walking into the throat of a beast. Gabriel Halloway hadn't swiped a Metro card in nearly 2 decades. In his world, the world of town cars, valet service, and first-class lounges, public transit was a rumor, something that happened to other people. His phone was dead, a sleek black slab of useless glass in his pocket. The rain had plastered his $500 haircut to his skull, and water was seeping into the seams of his Italian leather Oxfords, ruining the leather. He stood at the ticket kiosk, his hands trembling not from cold, but from a rage so potent it made his vision blur. He patted his pockets. The $100 bill he had thrown at Pierre was gone. His wallet was full of platinum and black cards that were now just jagged pieces of plastic, deactivated by the woman he had underestimated. He dug into the small coin pocket of his suit jacket, a pocket usually reserved for breath mints, and found a crumpled $10 bill he must have shoved there days ago after buying a coffee. He fed the bill into the machine. The machine wheezed and spat out a flimsy paper ticket. Gabriel stared at it. It felt lighter than air, yet it weighed a ton. It was his only currency. The platform was crowded, smelling of ozone, damp wool, and stale pretzels. When the train arrived, screeching like a banshee, Gabriel was shoved forward by the mass of tired commuters. There was no executive class here. He was squeezed between a man in the paint-stained overalls and a teenager listening to music so loud Gabriel could hear the bass rattling his own teeth. As the train rattled into the dark tunnel, Gabriel caught his reflection in the grime-streaked window. He didn't recognize the man staring back. The Gabriel Halloway in the glass looked haunted. His eyes were wide and bloodshot. His tie was crooked. The wet silk of his suit jacket looked cheap in the harsh fluorescent lighting. He looked like a man who had lost everything. Because he was. The train ride was a slow torture. Every stop was a reminder of how far he was falling. 42nd Street, the center of the world where he used to hold court. 34th Street, where he bought his suits. 14th Street, down, down, down. He closed his eyes and tried to summon his usual arrogance, his usual narrative. I can fix this, he told himself. I'm Gabriel Halloway. I'm the best salesman on the East Coast. I'll go to a competitor. I'll go to DHL or FedEx. I'll take my client list. But then the cold reality hit him like a physical blow. I don't have a client list. Vivian had the list. Vivian owned the company. And with the forensic accounting report regarding the embezzlement, she held a loaded gun to his head. If he tried to get a job at a competitor, a single phone call from Sterling Industries would end the interview. Background checks would reveal the financial irregularities. He was radioactive. The train finally lurched to his stop in the upscale suburbs of Westchester. The doors hissed open, and Gabriel stumbled out, gasping for fresh air. The walk to his house was a mile long. It was still raining, a cold, steady drizzle that soaked him to the bone. He walked past the manicured lawns of his neighbors, the lawyers, the doctors, the bankers. He wondered if they knew. Did the news travel that fast? Was there already a press release? Sterling Industries acquires Apex. Leadership shake-up announced. He reached his driveway. The house loomed ahead, a sprawling colonial revival that he had bought 3 years ago to prove he had made it. It was dark, pitch black. Usually Vivian left the porch lights on for him. Usually there was a warm glow from the kitchen window where she would be cleaning up after dinner. Tonight, the house looked like a tomb. He walked up the stone path, his wet shoes squishing loudly. He reached for his keys, his hand shaking so badly he scratched the paint on the door handle. He finally managed to slide the key in and turn the lock. Click, the sound echoed in the silence. He pushed the door open and stepped into the foyer. "Vivian?" he called out, his voice cracking. Silence. "Vivian, stop playing games. I know you're not at the St. Regis." He waited. He wanted her to come down the stairs, screaming, crying, throwing things. He wanted a fight. He could win a fight. He knew how to manipulate emotions, how to twist words until she felt guilty. But the silence remained. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. The house wasn't just empty. It felt vacated. The soul of the place was gone. Gabriel walked into the living room and collapsed onto the white sofa, not caring that his wetsuit was staining the fabric. He put his head in his hands, and for the first time in 20 years, he didn't know what his next move was. Gabriel sat in the dark for an hour. The adrenaline had completely faded, leaving behind a dull, throbbing ache in his chest. He was thirsty. He was hungry. But mostly, he was confused. He needed to understand. He stood up, his joints stiff, and walked to the kitchen. He opened the fridge. It was fully stocked. Tupperware containers of meal-prepped food were stacked neatly. A bottle of white wine sat in the door. It was so normal, so mundane. It made him furious. How could she live this double life while making him tuna sandwiches? He grabbed the wine bottle, uncorked it, and took a swig straight from the bottle. He needed to find her tracks. He needed to see how she had outmaneuvered him. He walked past the living room and stopped in front of the door under the stairs. The craft room. That's what he called it. Vivian called it her study. For years, Gabrielle had dismissed it as the place where she wrapped Christmas presents or paid the utility bills. He had never set foot inside. Why would he? He had his own office at Apex with a view of the Hudson. This was just a closet for a housewife's hobbies. The door was locked. Gabriel jiggled the handle. Locked tight. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. He looked around, grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from the hallway table, and jammed the base against the door handle. With a grunt of exertion and a sharp kick, the wood splintered. The door swung open. Gabriel flipped the light switch. He expected to see scrapbooks. He expected to see knitting needles. What he saw made the wine bottle slip from his fingers and shatter on the floor. The room was a command center. 3 large monitors were mounted on the wall, dark now, but connected to a high-end server tower that hummed quietly in the corner. A whiteboard covered the entire left wall. It was covered in complex flowcharts, supply chain diagrams, and mathematical formulas written in Vivian's neat, looping handwriting. Gabriel stepped over the broken glass and walked towards the whiteboard. He squinted at the writing. Target, Apex Logistics, weakness, high overhead in sales depth, G. Halloway. Leverage, Sterling Legacy Trust Capital. Timeline, Q3 acquisition. He saw his name, G. Halloway. He wasn't the husband here. He was a variable, a weakness in the corporate structure she was analyzing. On the desk, there were stacks of binders. He picked one up. It was labeled Competitor Analysis, Gabriel Halloway, Sales Patterns 2020 to 2024. He opened it. His breath hitched. Inside were transcripts. Not of their dinner conversations, but of his business strategies. There were printouts of his publicly filed quarterly reports, annotated with red ink. Gabriel overpromises on delivery times to close deals. Result, 15% increase in refund requests. Sustainable only due to legacy contracts. Gabriel relies on whining and dining rather than data-driven logistics. Inefficient. Costly. She had been grading him for years. While he was bragging about his killer instinct over dinner, she had been silently dissecting his incompetence. He flipped to another section. The Sasha liability. Gabriel froze. There were photos, not salacious ones, but surveillance photos. Sasha entering his car. Sasha wearing the diamond earrings, receipts from the jewelry store matched with bank statements. But the notes weren't angry. They were cold. Calculation. Expenditure on Mistress exceeds 12% of his discretionary income, creates financial vulnerability. He will be desperate to close the Sterling deal to cover the debts. Use this desperation to lower the acquisition price. Gabriel dropped the binder. He felt sick. He had thought he was hiding Sasha. He had thought he was clever. But Vivian had known. She had known for months, maybe a year. And she hadn't screamed. She hadn't demanded a divorce. She had used his affair as a business tactic. She had let him dig his own grave, spending more and more money on Sasha, becoming more desperate for the big bonus, so that when she finally made the offer to buy Apex, he would push the board to accept it, just to save his own skin. "My God," Gabriel whispered. "She played me. She played me like a fiddle." He looked around the small room. It was filled with books on corporate law, international shipping logistics, and forensic accounting. This wasn't the room of a woman who just inherited a company. This was the room of a woman who had spent 15 years preparing to run an empire, waiting for the moment her father passed the torch. And he had treated her like a servant. He remembered all the times he had silenced her at dinner parties. "Vivian doesn't understand the market," he would say to his colleagues. "She's the heart of the home, not the head." The irony tasted like ash in his mouth. He slumped into the office chair. An ergonomic Herman Miller, far nicer than the one he had at Apex. He looked at the desk calendar. Today's date was circled in red. The coronation. He had thought the coronation was his. He thought today was the day he became king. But the circle wasn't for him. It was for her. Today was the day she finally stepped out of the shadows, shed the skin of the dutiful wife, and ascended. Gabriel Halloway realized then, sitting in the glow of the desk lamp, that he had never really known his wife at all. He had married a reflection of what he wanted to see, while the real Vivian Sterling was building a fortress right under his nose. His eyes drifted to a small framed photo on the corner of the desk. It was an old picture from their honeymoon in Italy. They were both young, smiling, holding gelato. Gabriel looked happy. Vivian looked focused. Even then, her eyes were sharp, assessing the world. He reached out and turned the photo face down. The house creaked. The wind howled outside. Gabriel was alone in the war room of the enemy, and for the first time in his life, he knew he had lost before the game had even started. He needed to talk to her, not to beg. He just needed to hear her voice, to confirm that the woman who destroyed him was actually the woman he slept next to. He found a landline phone on the desk, an old-fashioned corded one. He picked it up. There was a dial tone. He dialed her cell number. He knew it by heart. Ring, ring, ring. "You've reached the voicemail of Vivian Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries," her voice said. It was the new recording. "Gone was the hi. This is Viv. Leave a message for the Halloways. Please leave a brief message regarding business inquiries. For personal matters." There was a pause in the recording. "Please contact my attorney. Liam Blackwood. Beep. Gabriel held the receiver until the dial tone returned, a long, flat drone that signaled the end of everything. The sun rose over Westchester with a cruel, blinding cheerfulness. It sliced through the broken door of the craft room, illuminating Gabriel Halloway, where he had passed out in the ergonomic chair. His neck was stiff, his mouth tasted like stale wine and regret, and his expensive suit was a wrinkled ruin of silk and sweat. He woke with a start, the events of the previous night rushing back like a tidal wave. The meeting, the chair turning around, Vivian, the firing. It wasn't a nightmare, he croaked, rubbing his face. He found his phone charger in the kitchen, one of the few things Vivian hadn't taken, and plugged in his dead phone. As soon as the screen lit up, it exploded with notifications. But they weren't the congratulatory texts he had expected 24 hours ago. Wall Street Journal. Sterling Industries acquires Apex Logistics in hostile takeover. LinkedIn. Gabriel Halloway's profile has been viewed 400 times. Text from Sasha. Don't contact me again. I spoke to a lawyer. If you come near me, I'll file a restraining order. Gabriel stared at the screen. The world had moved on without him. In fact, the world seemed to be cheering for his demise. He had to go to the office. He told himself it was to collect his personal effects, but deep down, a delusional spark remained. He thought maybe, just maybe, if he showed up, the team, his team, would rally behind him. He thought he could walk onto the sales floor and remind them who made them rich. He showered, shaved with a trembling hand, and put on the only clean suit he had left, a grey one that he hated because Vivian had bought it for him years ago. It fit perfectly. He took the train back into the city. The ride was a blur. When he emerged at the Apex Logistics headquarters, a gleaming glass tower he used to walk into like a god, he stopped. The sign above the revolving doors was already being changed. A team of workers was removing the blue Apex logo. A sleek silver S for Sterling was waiting on a flatbed truck nearby. Gabriel swallowed the lump in his throat and pushed through the doors. The lobby was bustling. He marched towards the elevators, his muscle memory taking over. He reached for his ID badge to scan at the turnstile. Beep, beep, beep. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. Sir? A heavy hand landed on his shoulder. Gabriel spun around. It was Frank, the head of building security. Gabriel had walked past Frank every morning for 5 years. He had never once learned Frank's last name. He had never asked about Frank's kids. Frank, Gabriel said, forcing a smile. System's acting up. Can you buzz me through? I need to get up to the 40th floor. Frank didn't smile. He looked tired. I can't do that, Mr. Halloway. Your clearance was revoked at 6 a.m. I have strict orders. Orders from whom? Gabriel demanded, his voice rising. I built this place, Frank. You work for me. He works for Sterling Industries now, a smooth voice interjected. Liam Blackwood stepped out of the elevator bank. He was holding a cardboard box, a standard white banker's box. It looked pathetically small. Mr. Blackwood, Gabriel seethed. You can't just lock me out. I have files up there. I have personal property. It's all here, Gabriel, Liam said, extending the box. We were thorough. A framed photo of a boat you don't own, a stress ball, 3 Mont Blanc pens, and a half-empty bottle of cologne. Everything else, the laptop, the tablet, the client Rolodex, is company property. Gabriel looked at the box. It was his life. 5 years of dominance reduced to a cardboard coffin. I want to see her, Gabriel said, ignoring the box. I know she's up there. I want to look her in the eye. Liam shook his head slightly, a look of almost clinical fascination on his face. She is in a transition meeting with the regional directors. She doesn't have time for disgruntled former employees. I am her husband, Gabriel shouted. The lobby went silent. Couriers stopped. Receptionists looked up. Technically, Liam said, lowering his voice, but the divorce filing was submitted electronically an hour ago. citing irreconcilable differences and financial infidelity. The forensic report is attached as Exhibit A. I wouldn't make a scene, Gabriel. It won't help your case. Gabriel stood there, the center of attention, but stripped of all power. He snatched the box from Liam's hands. Tell her, Gabriel started, but he stopped. What could he tell her? That he was sorry? That he was better than this? She knew he wasn't. She had the data. Tell her she won, Gabriel whispered. She knows, Liam replied. Just then, the elevator doors behind Liam opened. A group of executives walked out. Gabriel recognized them. His old VP of operations, his marketing director, people he had bullied and cajoled for years. They were laughing. They were listening intently to the person walking in the center of the group. It was Vivian. She looked radiant. She was wearing a navy power suit that cost more than Gabriel's car had. She held a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other. She was gesturing, explaining a new integration strategy. She commanded the space effortlessly. The air around her seemed to crackle with energy. Gabriel took a step forward. Vivian! She didn't stop. She didn't flinch. She simply turned her head slightly, her blue eyes locking onto his for a fraction of a second. There was no hate in that look. There was no anger. There was something far worse. There was indifference. She looked at him the way a CEO looks at a piece of outdated machinery being hauled away to the scrap yard. Necessary removal for the sake of efficiency. She turned back to her team. As I was saying, the restructure will prioritize transparency. We're cutting the dead weight. The group moved past him, heading toward the waiting black SUVs outside. The glass doors spun, and she was gone. Gabriel Halloway stood alone in the lobby of the building he used to rule. He looked down at the box in his hands. He looked at Frank, the security guard. You need to leave the premises, sir, Frank said, his voice not unkind but firm, or I'll have to call the police. Gabriel nodded slowly. He turned around and walked out into the busy street. The city moved around him, loud and chaotic. He was just another guy in a grey suit with a box of junk, looking for a cab that wouldn't stop. He realized then that the tragedy wasn't that he had lost his job or his money. The tragedy was that he had lived with a queen for 15 years and treated her like a servant, never realizing that one day she would pick up her crown, and when she did, heads would roll. He adjusted his grip on the box and started walking towards the subway. It was a long way down. And that is how Gabriel Halloway's empire crumbled, not with a bang, but with a signature. He spent years underestimating the quiet woman across the dinner table, mistaking her silence for submission. He thought he was the main character of a success story, never realizing he was actually the villain in her origin story. It's a brutal reminder that arrogance is a blinder. Gabriel was so busy looking at himself in the mirror that he didn't see the strategist analyzing his every move. Vivian didn't just leave him. She outgrew him, outsmarted him, and eventually evicted him from the life she had subsidized with her patience. In the end, the invisible wife was the only one who truly saw everything. The most dangerous person in the room is often the one you forgot to fear. Wow. What a ride. I have to ask you guys, do you think Vivian's revenge was justified, or was taking his job a step too far? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. How would you handle a betrayal like that? If you enjoyed this story of karma and corporate takeovers, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a lottery winner who hid the ticket from his family. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.